Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started with the introductory comments for today's webinar. So welcome to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Leah Wiggum and I'm an associate professor with the Health Promotion and Behavioral Sciences Department at UT Health Houston School of Public Health. I'm also the director of the UT Health Center for Community Health Impact in El Paso campus. Today's webinar is hosted by the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living at the UT Health Houston School of Public Health in Austin and is co-presented by DPAD, the Digital Physical Activity and Diet Collaborative, which is a population health initiative between UT Health Houston and MD Anderson. So I'm happy to be here today to present to you this webinar. Before we get started, I just want to make some brief housekeeping announcements. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived along with the presentation slides on the website at msdcenter.org. If you signed up for the webinar, you will get an email with the link to the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them into your question chat box. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Dr. Jim Hill. I've known Dr. Hill for many years. He's a wonderful scientist, and I have the privilege of getting to collaborate with him on the project that he's going to describe today. So it's a real treat and pleasure to be able to introduce him. Dr. Hill is a professor of nutrition sciences and director of the Nutrition Obesity Research Center at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Dr. Hill is a co-founder of the National Weight Control Registry, a registry of individuals who have been successful in maintenance of a reduced body weight. He recently launched the International Weight Control Registry to further investigate factors that contribute to successful weight loss management. So the original National Weight Control Registry has been around for many years, and we've learned a lot in the field of obesity from that registry. This new International Weight Control Registry, he's going to tell us more about today, and it's a really exciting international collaborative. He's co-founder of America on the Move, a national weight gain prevention initiative that aims to inspire Americans to make small changes to prevent weight gain. I will now hand it over to Dr. Hill to start his presentation on improving weight loss maintenance, the International Weight Control Registry. Jim, I turn it over to you.
Thank you for that nice introduction. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. And I'm going to talk about weight loss maintenance, one of my favorite topics, and then tell you about a new project that we're launching in collaboration with Leah and your group there in Texas. My intent is to leave a lot of time for questions. That's the most fun part of these talks for me. So I'm going to be very disappointed if you don't have a lot of questions. So let's get started. There we go. So what's the problem that I want to address today? The problem is that we're pretty good at losing weight, helping people keep weight off. There are so many slides I could show you, but this is the typical kind of study that's been done where we put people on various programs. In this particular one, they use different compositions of diets, and you can see the diets, but everybody regained weight over time. Now, I picked this slide because this is a group from Harvard, and if they can't maintain weight loss at Harvard, what hope do we have in Alabama and Texas for doing it? But the point being that we're good at weight loss, we're poor at weight loss maintenance. Despite that, we've spent so much of our time studying weight loss, and that's okay. We can look at better ways of producing weight loss, but we spent far less effort on weight loss maintenance, and there are a lot of reasons for that. This is just a study that I did several years ago with Sam Klein and Gary Foster and some others, where we looked at a low carbohydrate diet and a low fat diet. And what we found is, on average, over 2 years, there was no difference. the waterfall plot shows that it's amazing. And some people gained, 10 kilograms. Some people lost 35 kilograms. So one of the things that we know is it's possible to lose weight. It's possible to lose weight on diets of very different compositions. And within those programs, some people do really well, some people do really poorly. We don't understand that. And that's why part of what's going on in the field is called a precision approach to trying to understand that. But that's a talk for a different time. What we want to talk about today is the fact that while most people who undergo a program are successful, few are successful over the long term. We have surprisingly few data on long-term weight maintenance. Here's a study that published a few years ago that looked at studies that followed people out even 3 years. So most studies a follow-up of 1, maybe 2 years. There are a few studies that went out longer. What you can see in these studies here, everybody lost weight, but everybody regained it. And at the end, in the 4 studies that lasted 5 years, in 3 of them, they were back to baseline. Now, the 4th one is an interesting one. I'm going to talk a lot about it, but it involved a lot of physical activity. And we are going to come back to physical activity in a little bit. So the problem, we can produce weight loss. We cannot reliably produce weight loss maintenance in the majority of people. The things that I have come to believe over the years is that losing weight and keeping it off are very different processes. If you think about it, on weight loss, you just need acute negative energy balance. We rely heavily on our executive function. In other words, we use logic to record what we eat and tell ourselves we're going to do specific things. And we don't have to get precise. We just have to produce negative energy balance. Weight loss maintenance is a different ballgame. It's chronic. It's more than just executive function. Some other things have to come into play. And here you have to be exact. You have to, over a period of time, exactly match intake with expenditure. So again, we're successful here, we're not successful here. And I think it helps to think of these as separate processes where the optimum factors that influence weight loss may be different than the optimum factors that influence weight loss maintenance. We know a lot about weight loss. We know very little about weight loss maintenance. And the reason is these studies are hard to do. You review the literature on weight loss, you have thousands of studies. On weight loss maintenance, you're lucky if you find ones that go a year, very few after 1 year or 2 years, and almost none longer than that. So there's a reason these studies are expensive. They're very hard to do. You've got to produce weight loss in a ton of people to get weight loss maintenance. So it's a difficult thing to study. There's a reason why we don't have a lot of studies, but I would argue it is really a shortcoming in our field that we can help people get the weight off but not keep it off. Why is weight loss maintenance hard? Well, there are biological reasons, there are behavioral reasons, there are environmental reasons, there may be other reasons that we don't quite understand yet. I'm going to touch on these briefly before I get into our new project. The term many years ago of the energy gap, and let me tell you simply what that means. Before weight loss, here are most of your participants who come in for weight loss studies or weight loss programs. They have a certain body weight, they have a certain energy expenditure. Once they lose weight, their body weight goes down and their energy requirements go down. And we've called this decrease the energy gap. In other words, you require changes other than weight loss. You're going to require fewer calories to maintain your weight after weight loss than you did before. And we can measure this. And conceptually, we call this the energy gap, or it could be the behavioral gap. Traditionally, we've tried to close this gap by food restriction. Just continue to eat less. I think we have decades of results suggesting this is not a very effective way, that some people can do it. Some people can do almost anything. Very few who eat sufficiently little to maintain this weight loss. I'm going to talk a bit about exercise because this is another way to fill the gap. So rather than need food restriction, if you increase these energy expenditures, you lower the energy gap. And finally, and it's very timely today, medications. So we have huge medications for the first time ever, and the medications can work by closing this gap, whether they work on food intake or physical activity. But it helps to think about this conceptually, that after weight loss, you have a challenge. And that challenge is you cannot behave, eat, and exercise the same way you did before. If you do, your weight's going to come up to the same way before. Now, we tried to get some indication of how big this gap is. This is work several years ago where we put people in our whole rim calorimeters. And what we found on average, it's very much an average, is that people that would lose about 10% of their weight, typically taking a 100-kilogram person, their energy expenditure or their energy gap might be something like 200 calories a day. Doesn't sound like a lot, but try modifying your behavior by 200 calories a day. Once you go to 15%, it's more like 300 calories a day. The reason we like the energy gap is you can sort of get a target for how much behavioral change you need. So you can target 200 calories a day of behavior change, either in eating, exercising more, or potentially in some of the medications. The other thing that happens, in addition to the energy gap, which is the decrease in energy expenditure, what we know is a lot of substrates and hormones change in a way to increase hunger. So after weight loss, you're left with needing to eat less food to maintain your weight, and by the way, you're hungrier. So it may not be a surprise that over the long term, very few people are able to overcome these and maintain their weight. So how do we really keeping weight off? Well, the first step is sort of behavioral. And there are many behavioral causes of weight gain, and anticipate that if we could reverse some of these and change this negative energy balance to positive, that it would help people keep weight off. The problem is, I just list here, I don't know, 20, 25, 30. I bet if we went around the virtual room here, we could end up with hundreds of potential behavioral causes of obesity. So the question is, what do? You certainly, in the long run, need to affect both energy intake and energy expenditure. That's not so easy to do because we know behavior, there are many factors that affect behavior. There are individual factors, your individual beliefs, where you live, all kinds of things. There are behavioral settings. What does the community look like? Are there sidewalks? Are there places to exercise? Is there healthy food, etc.? Sectors of influence here, you have the government, public health, media use. When you look at it, coming down to how it affects energy balance, how it affects energy intake, and how it affects energy expenditure. But the influences on these behaviors are massive, and they are present at many, many different levels. So what I'm getting at is this isn't easy. And when you tell someone to change their behavior, what you have to do is take into account there are other factors harder or easier or even impossible to do those behavior changes. Now, I've always been driven by the energy balance system as a model. People talk about the energy balance theory. Energy balance isn't a theory. Energy balance is simply a description of how energy goes through the body. So there's energy intake, energy expenditure, you store energy, but there are so many factors that affect these, and they're interrelated. So if you change energy intake, and assume that everything else isn't going to change. So energy balance simply presents a framework for how we think about managing weight. But if you go one step farther, the next slide, I'm going to show you the Forsyth report in the UK, which is their model developed a few years ago for addressing obesity. And here is their model. So what you essentially have are different systems. Each of these colored are different systems: social psychology, physical activity, environment, etc. You can see here in tiny little font here at the center is energy balance. So you're here, but all these factors affect you. So when you're looking at something like weight loss maintenance, there are so many factors at play, but I maintain that any factor that impacts body weight must work through energy balance. Anything you change is ultimately going to change energy intake, energy expenditure, metabolism, body composition. So energy balance is simply a framework for understanding it. It doesn't give the answers, just allows you a framework for how to study it. So in all this, that it's hard, how do we learn more about weight loss maintenance? Well, the approaches that we have taken is to find people who have succeeded and learn from them. So in the early 1990s, I think it was 1992, Dr. Rena Wing, who's a behavioral psychologist, and she was at University of Pittsburgh at the time. We were at a conference, and at lunch we went out for lunch and a beer. So this is literally a project that started over a beer, and we were brainstorming about it. That time was, gee, nobody succeeds at long-term weight loss. It's just impossible. So we kind of first jokingly said, you know, we ought to just go out and find people that are successful. And then we kind of realized that wasn't a terrible idea. So we came up with the notion of setting up a registry, learn from people who were successful. Now, 1992, probably many of you were in kindergarten or something, but that was before the internet, that was before big data. We developed surveys, put them in the regular mail, put a stamp on it, and sent it out to people, and they sent it. So what we agreed, because today we have the ability to take all kinds of data and analyze it. We didn't have that at the time. So we said, let's try to limit this to people that we think are really successful. So we came up with the criteria to be in the registry. You must have maintained a 30-pound weight loss for at least a year. There's nothing magical about that, but we just wanted to make sure we were getting people who we felt really were successful. We have continued to study the National Weight Control Registry. It's still there. We aren't actively recruiting the way we were before because we sort of answered the questions we set out to answer. But as of, I'll give you the data, as of March 2020, we had 10,000 people in the registry, 10,000 people that we had followed. These are people that self-reported that they had lost at least 30 pounds and kept it off for at least a year. The average weight loss in this group was 70, almost 76 pounds or 40 kilograms, 34 kilograms. And the mean duration of weight was 5 years. So I think any way you cut it, we're successful. Now, you might say, these people are self-reporting. How do you know they really lost the weight, et cetera, et cetera? It is self-reported, and that's one of the limitations. But I always felt that this is not necessarily a group that people wanted to be in unless they had succeeded. So we recognize lots of problems with self-reports, but overall, we feel like we do have a group that's succeeded. So what our intent was to say, can we see commonalities among these people? And can we use those commonalities to help improve our weight management programs? Well, the first thing we found is there was absolutely no consistency in how they lost weight. They lost weight on the American Heart Diet. They lost weight on the beer diet. They lost weight on just about every diet you could come up with. What we did find is a lot of commonality in how they're maintaining the weight. Here are the things they had in common. Now, the caveat is for each one of these, there are people in the registry that did not do it. There are exceptions to this, but the majority of people here, they typically eat a low-fat diet. Even during the heyday of Atkins, most of the people were eating a low-fat diet. There were some who were eating low carb, but most were still eating low fat. Low fat by self-reports 30% or less. So it didn't be orange low, but lower than the average. They also paid attention to calories. You know, when we went out with the low fat message in the 70s or 80s, it was eat low fat, but we didn't do anything with quantity. So you had the low fat cookies and you eat the whole box. High levels of physical activity. I'm going to come back to this one because I think this is one of the key every day. They often keep records of physical activity, etc. So they pay attention. Behavioral consistency. These people, they don't take weekends off, they don't take holidays off, they're very consistent. The only, if you even would call it negative, that we find in how they compare to a normal, like a typical population you would take, is they're higher in dietary restraint, which may not be very surprising because they're paying attention to what they eat. These people eat breakfast almost every day, and there's been a lot of literature around breakfast. And the point is that I don't think breakfast alone is going to make much of a difference on weight, but I think eating breakfast may be a behavioral pattern that's consistent with long-term success. Now, one of the things we were interested in is, you know, is life better after weight loss? And in fact, massively so. So quality of life, energy, all this improves. Very seldom does it worsen. There's some, but from it was very good. Now, it didn't do everything, so it didn't necessarily help your marriage or your relationships, etc. And one of the that we often say, and it is actually true, a lot of people, most of these people were women, and a lot of them, when they lost weight, they did change spouses, or you know, and I think what we realized is for a lot of them, the spouse was sort of holding them back, and you can see life was so much better that they wanted to overcome barriers. We're not advocating that for interventions, but just reporting it. So in summary, weight loss is different from weight loss maintenance. This is where I learned that from the registry. Many diets work for weight loss, maintenance is hard. Successful losers have some behaviors in common, and success is associated with improved health and happiness. In the National Weight Control Registry, 93% exercise regularly. 7% don't. So there's 7% that are maintaining weight with no exercise. But I always ask people, think you're a lot more likely to be in the 93% or the 7%. They exercise about an hour a day. And we see over time when they reduce their exercise, they gain weight. We did a really cool study a few years ago where we compared people in the registry with normal weight control. So they were matched for weight here. And then we had a group that were matched for their pre-weight loss weight. The takeaway from this slide is the people who are maintaining weight loss have to do more exercise than normal weight controls to maintain their weight. So I think this extra exercise is a penalty for being obese, and I think it's helping to fill that energy gap. Exercise does is to begin to reverse some of these factors that lead to hunger. So it actually helps you manage your intake better. Sort of what we see is here's the energy gap. After weight loss, there's a gap. What we've tried to do is to bring intake down and match it. Doesn't work very well, but if you add physical activity, then and maybe a little bit of food restriction, then you can have an energy economy after weight loss that's very close to the first. But this takes a lot of physical activity. And our environmental factors, and this is actually work we did through the International Weight Control Registry. We were interested in how obesity may differ by region, and you can see that in fact it does. And these are NHANE numbers, that the Midwest and South are highest, the Northeast and the West are lowest. So there are some environmental and geographical factors that play a role. we don't yet understand those. And then finally, I put this one up because there may be factors we don't understand. Are we missing it? So what I want to do in the 15 or 20 minutes that's left is to tell you about the International Weight Control Registry. And again, this is very much following on the National Weight Control Registry. The difference is with technology today, we have a much better ability to collect and analyze information. So everything we're getting in this project is via the web. It's online, where the National Weight Control Registry, we had to have paper and pencil. The other thing is in the National Weight Control Registry, because we had limited ability to analyze data, we only looked at in the International Weight Control Registry, we want people who lost weight and regained it. We want people that were unsuccessful, tried to lose weight and were unsuccessful. And a big one is we want people who are just starting weight loss programs. So we get a chance to follow people over time. But by being able to have these different groups and make comparisons in different groups, we begin to maybe get some new information. For example, in comparing those that lose weight and succeed with those that lose weight and don't, can we identify factors that may be similar for weight loss but different for weight loss maintenance? One of the cool things that we can do in the International Weight Control Registry is free text analysis. So we have these people fill out a ton of questionnaires, and I'll show you some of these. We collect biological information, behavioral, environment, psychosocial. So there are a whole series of questionnaires that we'll fill out to collect this information. But one of the things we decided to do at the end of the questionnaire, we ask people to tell us, have we missed anything? So we give them the idea just to use free text and tell us anything. And there's a way to analyze that. So we have people working with us who are experts on analyzing free text. I thought at first, I didn't understand it all, but we hope to do with free text is to identify the things that we haven't asked people. So we fully anticipate as this project moves forward, we will learn how to. It really is cool because we can get this information online. What we typically do right now is that when they join the registry and everything's online, so we send people to the website, they do informed consent, everything right online, then they get questionnaires that they fill out. Right now, we're asking people those questionnaires every year. That's what we did in the National opportunity that we have here is that we have all these people's email address. We can potentially go back out with specific questionnaires as we come up with something we want to know. For example, something maybe we want to compare between successful maintainers and regainers, we can send a questionnaire and in a few days have some information back. So really a lot of opportunity to gather information. So why is the IWCR different? Well, in the National Weight Control Registry, I didn't show you this data, but we largely engaged upper middle class educated white women. Okay, we had a few men, not very many, very few minorities. Now, you might say that was the group that was succeeding. Don't know if they were the ones succeeding, just weren't able to capture the other. Great pains in the IWCR to include underrepresented populations, and working with Leah, we hope to get folks of Hispanic origin in the South, here at UAB and Pennington and Baton Rouge. We are working to get people with African heritage involved. We want to get disparate populations. We are working here, there's a huge group at UAB that works with people with disabilities. We know almost nothing about weight management in this group and a wide age range. So it's important that the target population that we have previously looked for. We get successful and unsuccessful and aspirational. These are the people that are just beginning, and we really think this is a huge opportunity. Now, our hope is, and I'll show you where we are in a second, but our hope is to expand this so that we have a sufficient sample size to allow precision approaches. Precision approach is that one size doesn't fit all. So even with people who with long-term weight loss maintenance, it's likely that not everybody is using the same way of doing that. So with a larger sample size, we can look for differences even within these groups. Whereas in the National Weight Control Registry, we focused primarily, almost exclusively on behavior. We're really interested in this group on the context in which behavior occurs. Now, much of what we're getting right now is from questionnaires. Again, we use validated questionnaires when possible, but we still suffer a little bit from self-reports. What we've been trying out that has worked incredibly well is to do some objective remote data collection. So we have a sub-study going on in the National Weight Control Registry where we send wireless scales, we send physical activity monitoring devices, etc., out to people. And this has worked very, very well. We have a huge success rate in getting this data and getting people to respond. So we want to do more of this. One benefit of the registry is that we can follow people long term. We can follow them as long as we can get them to stay in the registry. And realizing that, we are spending a lot of effort looking at retention, not just recruitment, but retention. For example, if you get an NIH grant to do a weight loss study, you're lucky if you get the ability to follow people up for 1 or 2 years. We know about longer than 1 or 2 years. So we're trying to tell people, if you're starting a study, ask those people to enroll in the registry. Now, the cool thing about the registry is we can code people as detailed as you want. So we can code people for specific studies. So if Leah is doing a study, she can enroll her people, we can code them so we know they're in Leah's study, and we can provide those long-term information back to Leah. Now, they become part of the registry in a de-identified way, but it allows us to provide specific follow-up to investigators at the same time using this information to understand more about weight loss maintenance. Because of the ability to use sophisticated data techniques, we have the flexibility to grow and evolve. We anticipate that some of questionnaires may go away, others may evolve. That's something that we're figuring out as we go. One of the things that I am excited about in this project is it really facilitates team science. And team science in the US, we're working with several countries around the world. And I think in the obesity field, we haven't done a very good job of linking efforts in different countries. It also provides tremendous research trainings, a huge data set that is perfect for graduate students, for postdoctoral fellows, for K awards. And we think that this database is going to be terrific for that. We're approaching this is to try to build a partnership with our target population, is to say, you know, as you join this registry, be part of the science here. Help us develop better questions. Help us understand this. So it's also almost this citizen scientist approach. How can we engage people in helping us? And that's part of, I think, how we're going to be better able to keep people in the registry down the road. But we're doing other things, like we have a newsletter that we provide information back to our participants, and we're looking for other ways to be valuable for these people to stay in the registry. The pandemic, at least at UAB, taught us that we can do a lot of research virtually. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to recruit sub-studies. So you can go into the registry and identify specific types of people that you want to study and can conduct sub-studies. So we feel like there's a lot of potential ways that the IWCR is going to move things forward in the obesity field on data analysis. And so one of the things we're going to do is to test specific hypotheses. And so we have a lot of hypotheses about factors that are involved in long-term, sorry. So we will test those. But the other thing we're doing is using discovery science. Now, discovery science is a term, I think we used to call it fishing. But the idea here is that we have AI and machine learning and complex modeling that can take data sets, help us understand that in a way that the human brain couldn't. And so we approach this both from specific hypothesis we have versus, and on the other hand, discovery science, and maybe develop new hypotheses about these combinations of factors may play a role. And that's where also the free text analysis comes in. So this is kind of cool. This is the typical way we've always done it. This is kind of a new way to allow us to maybe develop new hypotheses or identify factors that we didn't really think played a role in weight loss maintenance. And then out of this, the long-term follow-up for people that lose weight. And we're approaching now, I think all of you know that we have a new class of drugs, obesity drugs that are around that are way more effective than anything we've done before. But if you look at that, we have very little information long-term, more than a year or so, about use of those drugs. So we're in conversations with pharma companies. Enroll your people in the registry and let us provide you long-term follow-up, which will help us also better understand factors of weight loss. So examples, behaviors and psychological profiles and combinations of factors that separate people that are successful from unsuccessful. We can look at this with specific hypotheses, but we can also use a discovery science to take the data from these groups and see what's different. We're really interested in contextual factors that are associated with successful and unsuccessful outcomes and maintenance among similar behavioral psychological profiles. So taking people that look similar, but some are successful and some aren't successful, will allow us to say, what are we missing? What are the we're looking for here? And then, of course, we want to know the individual contextual, metabolic, microbiomic, and genomic factors associated with success and unsuccess. And over time, this is a way that we sort of promote the precision approach. Can we, and what factors contribute to successful weight loss maintenance in different people? Here's the way discovery science works: is you have learning algorithms, mechanistic models, and a bottom-up approach. So we have a whole group of people that are really experts in using these techniques to go into data sets to begin to develop new hypotheses, develop interesting models. And what this is going to lead us to, I think, asking better questions. So where are we with this program? This with myself and Susan Roberts, who's at Tufts University. So Susan and I are the founders of the IWCR. What led to this is after the National Weight Control Registry became very popular, we really have published dozens of papers. Several countries around the world started small registries. Most of them were very small. They weren't very well funded, and they weren't sustainable. But a lot of those people reached out to me, and I tried to help them get started. Sue and I recognized that maybe it was time to just have all these different registries around the world. So we started in 2019, 2020. We started meeting with groups, co-investigators to move forward, and we were heartened. There was a lot of interest in held us forward is that in 2021, we got a supplement, an NIH supplement to our Nutrition Obesity Research Center, and it allowed us to really enroll 3,000 participants fairly quickly. And this was essential for getting the registry going. This is just in the US. It allowed us to initiate data analysis. We actually have a paper. We have one paper about the registry that's in press, and we'll update this. We have a lot more abstracts and papers in press. In 2022, we started our sub-studies of looking at sending wearables and scales out, started doing 24-hour recalls, environmental assessments, et cetera, and really focusing on sustaining financial support. And we're still doing that. So the NIH supplement has run out. We're in the process right now writing some new NIH grants. We're also reaching out to pharma companies, other private industries, some foundations about ongoing support. You guys here, we've got Colorado, we've got University of Kansas, Pennington Center, here's Birmingham, this is a US Military Academy, University of New Hampshire, and Tufts. Totally open to expanding this. We want as much as possible to make this registry open, and we want to welcome people into it. At the same time, we have to make sure that we have some direction and some sort of direction for how to do this. But again, we anticipate that over time, we will have other centers in the US join us. Right now, we have people from every state. You can see here are the states that are represented, not as many out here, a lot in the South and East. We're hoping you guys will increase here, but we've got a pretty good broad representation. I think in the next slide. Shows worldwide. We're working with, I think at last count, it was 25 countries that are in some stage of working with us. The ones, Greece, Italy, Kuwait, are way down the road. They've been collecting data, and we hope to have some publications from these countries very soon. My idea is that we create this collaboration of top researchers across the world, and we work with each other. So for example, just differences, say, in Greece and the US, what the country difference is, how those factors may play a role in success, because ultimately the optimum intervention in Greece is probably going to be different than the optimum intervention in New Jersey. So we're very excited about working with people around the world. We enrolled, I told you, we enrolled those 3,000 people. We're now, we stopped enrollment for a while to analyze this. We're back re-enrolling now, so we're going to increase pretty quickly. But to show you that we had a pretty good spread, these are the maintainers, these are the regainers, these are the ones that didn't lose in the first place. These are the ones that are first attempt. And this is one, we hadn't really marketed this very well, and we think this can grow very quickly. But you can see that I had anticipated we might get about 20% who were successful. That's kind of what we felt like was present in the US. It's a little bit higher, but it allows us a really nice comparison between people who have successful and people. One of the big things, we're working with the University of Kansas. They have a lot of interest in weight management in rural areas, so we're trying to increase there. You can see we have a pretty good age range. We have a pretty good breakdown of here's African Americans, more than one race, etc., white. So we're really attempting to get a broad representation in this registry. Where we are right now is we have one published paper that describes the registry. It's sort of our baseline paper to say, here's the registry, here's what it does, here's what we can do with it. We have 12 manuscripts in progress, so that 3,000 people that we were able to recruit through the NIH grant has led to a ton of manuscripts being developed. And we presented over 12 abstracts that were presented or submitted. We're excited about is we're very much in line with the NIDDK strategic plan. We've looked at this very carefully, and we think the IWCR is set up to advance each of these 4 goals. Now, you know that if you look at treatment of obesity, these are crude numbers. Behavioral treatment, we get 5 to 20, and that's going up. Surgery, 30 to 40. We need to these people long term and really look at what happens as a function of the different types of treatment. For example, with the GLP-1 drugs, what happens 4, 5, 6 years down the road? Do these people keep taking their drugs? If they're successful, are they having any sort of other problems, etc.? Wonderful follow-up opportunities. I'll quickly show one other thing we're interested in here. We developed a model suggesting that long-term weight loss maintenance depends on not just using executive function. This is important for weight loss, but it's not enough for weight loss maintenance. And we developed a theory that what happens is you need to essentially have an identity transformation. And so we're writing a grant right now to look at this in the registry. It's a perfect place to look at this kind of question. And our researchers have many, many more of these questions. Quickly to finish up, our overall leadership, Sue Roberts and I are the leaders. We have divided up into different teams: data support, recruitment, retention. This is a big one. Operations, training of early career folks, and we think it's a great opportunity to involve graduate students. This is a volunteer scientist partnership. It's a global collaboration. We think it can ultimately lead to a precision approach to weight management. We use wonderful new techniques that I have no clue how to do, but we have people that know how to do them, and it's just amazing. It's a virtual project. I think it's consistent with the future of clinical research. We welcome collaborators, new ideas, and support. This total resource for the obesity research community, and we're very happy that you guys are going to be working with us. Leah is the contact there, but I hope many of you see the opportunity to get involved. So in summary, we can reliably produce weight loss maintenance. We do not completely understand reasons for weight regain, and we need to understand. Not likely to be a single strategy, and we need to use a precision approach. Weight loss maintenance is very difficult to study prospectively. What we can do is to create compelling hypotheses that can help develop prospective studies of long-term weight loss maintenance. Thank you for your attention. As said before, I hope you have a lot of questions. Call me. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to get unmuted. I tried dialing in. I tried everything. Sorry about that. Sorry for the delay. Okay, thank you for a great talk, Jim. We have some questions rolling in, and I have a few myself, but I'll hold off on mine. I'm just going to remind people that this webinar is brought to you by the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living, and the organizers put a link in the chat where you will be able to access the recording of the webinar once it gets posted later today or tomorrow. And the co-host of the webinar is the DPAG Collaborative. I'm one of the PIs for the DPAG Collaborative. This is the Digital Physical Activity and Diet Collaborative. And our goal is to bring together researchers who are interested in addressing obesity, diet, and physical activity through technology-based research. So we thought it would be a great idea to bring on Dr. Hill to talk about the IWCR, because what a great research mechanism to study obesity through all primarily online tools. So we're going to open it up for questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. The organizers helped me by putting the DPAD link and description in the message center as well, so you have access to that link if you're interested. So Jim, the first question that came in, and I'm not sure if this question was for the National Weight Control Registry or the International Weight Control Registry, but I expect they were referring to data from the National Weight Control Registry. What type of physical activity did the population engage in? Moderate, vigorous, aerobic, muscle strengthening, bone strengthening, etc.?
Question. What we found is that the number one activity was walking, but usually walking was supplemented with something else. And I think what these people realized, they could get a lot of exercise by walking, but they needed to add something. So most people would do walking plus something aerobic. Now, what we did publish is the use of resistance exercise in this group is higher than in the general public. And that's something we've always felt like was probably important. These people do more resistant training than a typical group that you would pull out would do. So walking plus other aerobic plus some resistance. So they really figured it out. I think the reason they didn't do it with walking alone, you had to do so much that's hard to do it with just walking alone. So they combined it with some more intense aerobic activity.
Great question. Okay, the next question, and I believe this probably refers to IWCR. Are there any questions on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? And then how detailed are the questions for LGBTQ subpopulations?
So in the National Weight Control Registry, we don't have any of that to my knowledge, but we are beginning to get that in the International Weight Control Registry. So we do have a questionnaire that's beginning to explore that. I don't know if anybody's looked at those data yet, and I don't know how good our questions are. And that's one of the other things, as you guys get involved, take a look at what we're asking, and maybe there's expertise there that would help us ask that better. We're very open to that. I know we have something about that. I don't recall how comprehensive, and I don't think anybody has done anything yet with those data. But we don't have any of that in the National Weight Control Registry yet. We will have that in the IWCR.
Okay, great. Let's see. What weight change criteria would be the most and least conservative for participant eligibility in a weight maintenance behavioral trial?
Great question. So let me answer that first for the registry, and then I'll ask it for a trial. So one of the things, and I should have said this, we want to exclude almost no one from the IWCR. If you are interested in your weight or changing your weight, we want you to join. And that's why we don't have any specific criteria. If weight is of interest to you or weight change is of interest to you, we want you to join. So the only people that wouldn't join are those people that have no interest in changing their weight at all. Now, the bigger question in a weight maintenance trial is one that I think we have not answered yet. So if I produce a 20% weight loss in all my participants, how do I measure success? It's probably not keeping all 20% off. Is it keeping off 15% or 10%? A set criteria of that. So I think what you have to do right now is set your own sense of criteria, and you may have multiple ones to say, you know, we're looking at the number of people that keep 15 to 20% off, 10 to 15% off, but I don't think we have a definition of how much weight gain would classify as success or failure.
I agree. That's a not well defined within the broader research field in this area. So Jim, one of the things that struck me most about joining the IWCR as an investigator, and I assume we will have lots in the audience today who are investigators, was really the advantage of being able to tap into the expertise of the broader IWCR team. And you talked about that quite a bit, but I just wanted to emphasize some of my observations of that experience of being part of this team, and then see if you wanted to elaborate or add any additional commentary.
Couldn't agree more. And the first question is perfect. If there's someone there who's an expert on this, you know, childhood experiences, we would love to get them involved.
I agree, absolutely. So, you know, there's this, Jim showed a broad array of surveys that are already part of the IWCR. And what comes behind that, not only is the expertise in those surveys, those specific tools, but a team that manages all the data, a team that has statistical expertise to do some of the really cool analyses that can be part of that. And something that I've really grown to appreciate is just the ability to do online survey tools and have some expertise in how to manage that process. Because if you're not aware with doing online surveys, it's quite a pain these days, because there are all these nefarious folks out there that try and tap into these online surveys, and you have to be really sophisticated and really stay on top of how to identify you know, the strong responses from the ones that might just be people out there looking for free gift cards, for example. So I've just found it extremely valuable to be part of this team of really talented scientists and a core of data folks that really understand how to do this kind of work. So Jim, do you want to elaborate on that?
Fun people, Leah. We have fun doing it too.
That's right, absolutely. Is there any more you want to add to that, Jim?
No, that's it. You nailed it. And
okay.
I'm happy you guys are participating. And I guess people in the audience, I hope you find a way to get involved in this. We need help in different areas. And if we bring our best experts together, we can do some amazing things.
Okay, great. Well, you know, one of those data scientists who's part of the IWCR team also happens to be one of our DPAD speakers next week, in fact, Dr. Diana Thomas. So Jim, you know Di very well, as do I.
Very involved in our data.
And so next week, Diana Thomas is going to be speaking at 10 a.m. Central Time on May 9th. The title of her talk is Mathematical Modeling in Precision Nutrition. As I mentioned, she's part of the IWCR team as well. So if you want to learn more about that, please feel free to join us. We're just at the end of our time now, so I'd like to thank Dr. Jim Hill again for being here today. Please reach out to us if you have follow-up questions or want to learn more about the IWCR. I can certainly help connect you to those to those answers as well. You can also go to the IWCR website. So thank you all for joining us today. And Jim, thanks so much for being our speaker. Much appreciated.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Bye-bye.